Hey folks, Astronomy Live here. Gonna be doing a brief stream tonight. Just working on some satellite tracker stuff. And I hope the music in the background isn't too loud.
Select settings, then press the OK button.
So I'm not sure if it is or not, but let me know in the chat. Hey Blue. Okay. Yeah, this all looks okay.
Next Star Special Edition. Press Enter to begin alignment. Select method. Auto 2-star. 1-star alignment. Solar system alignment. EQ north alignment. Time in hours, minutes, seconds. Daylight saving. Date in month, day, year. Select method. EQ auto alignment. EQ 1-star alignment. Select star 1. Alberio.
Alright, so let's see, I'm gonna initialize the mount. And I'm just gonna test some stuff here with the satellite tracker. I want to cover some things going on with the channel as well. So you may know that we've been having issues lately, myself and other channels, with FE Core, a group of flat earthers. And they did file a privacy complaint against my video covering their antics of filing false privacy complaints. It's a bit meta, I guess. Certainly ironic. So I received that 2 days ago, and it's now gone to YouTube for review. And so I'm hoping YouTube makes the right decision and does not take the video down. So far they haven't. But it's possible. It depends on how closely they look at the situation. Because here's the thing, they're complaining about a segment of the video where I show FE Core's About page on their website. Perhaps more importantly, it's a website they link to from their own channel. Now, when you file a privacy complaint with YouTube... Oh, despise this music. Alright, well, I've only got one person in the chat and they despise the music, so I'll just mute that for now. So, when you file a privacy complaint with YouTube, you have to certify that the privacy complaint you're filing, or the information you're filing about, did not come from your own channel. You have to it asks you whether it came from your own channel or not. And if you say yes, the information came from your channel or your video, then basically you get an immediate rejection. The system says okay, and it takes in your form and it looks at your form, and then a second later you get an email that says we couldn't find anything infringing here because, well, the information you filed out indicated, they don't say this directly, but yes, it's because you clicked yes. If you file an identical privacy complaint, you don't check that box. If you say no, it did not come from your channel, then it might accept the information, it might accept the form. But if you say yes, it's going to reject you. Because obviously, if you're releasing the information yourself on your own channel, well, then that's on you. You have consented to the release of that information. You can't use that to attack someone or try to get their video pulled down. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, pretty self-explanatory, but sadly this has to be explained to some people.
Alfeca. Altair. Antares. Altair. Center. Use direction buttons to center object in the finder scope.
Right.
Press enter when ready, undo to try a different object. Altair. 1 moment. Star pointer off.
Okay.
Next Star Special Edition.
Alright, so the mount's initialized now. So yeah, they should have checked yes on that box. The information came from their channel. They link to their own website on their channel. And on that website, that is exactly what I was showing, their website with their About page. And on their About page, they show their pictures, they show their names. This is all public information, and it's public information, more importantly, that they link to. That disqualifies them from even asking for a privacy strike on the channel. However, they obviously lied on the form and clicked no. Just like they attacked Red's rhetoric, not only with privacy strikes like this, but also with a copyright strike, and I think they did the same to Slice Barcane as well. And in the case of Red's channel, he got a copyright strike for footage that they don't have any rights to at all. It was actually filmed by Sean Hufford, showing their supposed physical location, their address in Indiana, where they actually don't seem to have a real presence. There's just a church building there. So they struck that too. Don't want that information out there, do they? They claim it was for the thumbnail for the video. The interesting thing there is you can file a copyright strike on a video's thumbnail, and you can specify that it's the thumbnail that you're striking, not the whole video. They struck the whole video. If you try to upload that video now, even without that thumbnail, YouTube says, no, you can't, because there's a pending copyright strike on it. You have to significantly alter the video to get it to go through the filters. So yeah, there's a whole lot of nonsense going on there right now, unfortunately. So who knows? I might get a privacy strike on the channel here. If I do, I'll be sure to inform YouTube that I actually haven't violated anyone's privacy, that I didn't show any private information, and that all the information I showed is not only publicly available, it was available by simply following their channel and clicking on the links that they provided on their videos. So, that's what's going on there, and tonight I'm just doing a little bit of checking on things with SatTraker here. I've got the code pulled up, as you can see, and a camera pointed at the telescope in the room here in a sort of fake polar alignment. I'm not actually polar aligned, of course, and I'm just indoors here testing with the telescope. But yeah.
This will exit next remote and cause you to lose your alignment.
No, I don't want to.
Do you want to proceed?
No, I don't. No, I don't. So I think I was on COM port 8. I should have paid closer attention to that while I was talking. This is going to be ASCOM equatorial. Oh, let's just do brightness tracking for now. Yeah, I can track that light. That's fine. And go ahead and try to connect the scope. Alright, so this is going to be Celestron telescope driver. I'm just going to pull this over here on my other window. Okay, just in case it tried to... Oh, it's on COM 6. Okay. I guess I should have picked COM 6. Yeah, just in case it shows my location information. I don't want that showing up on the stream, sorry. No self-doxing tonight. Oh, hey, Cruising with Jay. You think somebody might try to claim what is theirs? This footage? Well, they might. I mean, YouTube apparently lets you claim anything as yours. I think that's the funny thing. YouTube doesn't seem to care that they're receiving copyright complaints, and this has happened to me before, and now it's happening to Red's Rhetoric. They're receiving copyright strikes or DMCA takedown requests for footage that has in no way belongs to the person who's claiming it, and they aren't doing anything about it. That's the thing that gets me. Okay, I understand they have to follow the law, and the law lays out a procedure, and it's pretty much by the numbers. However, even with that, even with following the law, you would think that when they receive what is obviously a fraudulent copyright complaint for footage that didn't belong to the person who was claiming it, there would be consequences, repercussions for those who were making false copyright claims. And they might give lip service to it publicly, but they don't actually seem to do much about it when push comes to shove. So in the video description, you'll find a tweet from Red's Rhetoric that we would all like you to retweet and try to get YouTube's attention. It's been retweeted hundreds of times, and they still haven't given an appropriate response to this situation. Alright, so this is probably not going to work because I told it COM 8, and it's actually COM 6. can't remember. It's been so long since I've messed with this. Okay, maybe it will work anyway. Seems like it does. Yeah, well, I've got telescope control here. But that's through ASCOM, not my program, directly. So that's good. And let's see here. So let me see if I can find. See if I can find a TLE file. Come here for a second. Select the TLE file. SDO TLE. Yeah, we'll pretend to track the SDO spacecraft, because that should be overhead somewhat. Even from there? Yeah, should be, but let's pretend to be. Should I? Yeah. I'm going to pretend to be further west. And nope, that didn't do anything. Okay, are we getting errors? What are we getting? Ah. It says it does conform to TLE format. I need to check that file, I guess. Where's it pulling that file from? Okay, Python track. Sure. Alright, so let's check that file. My program complains that the orbital elements I just fed it aren't in the correct format. Oh, they're really not. Ouch. Oof. There's double spacing in this file. Why is that? That's terrible. That is awful. Okay. Where's SDO in this file? First of all, this is actually a master file of a ton of satellites that have probably been pulled from SatTraker by one of my other programs. And it saved it in a weird format where there's double spacing, which is not correct. That's why my program is rejecting it, saying, hey, the format's not right, which is true. It wasn't right. Now it is. Okay. So, I wonder if I can just reselect it. Well, alright, I'll have it switch files just to make sure it clears its memory. And then do it again. Pick SDO TLE. Alright. Oh, thanks, Cruisin'. Yeah, and as far as people trying to claim credit for stuff, if they want to try to claim credit for my code, well, first of all, this is only a tiny portion of the code. Second of all, I have uploaded this code already. It's already open source on GitHub. So you can go check out version 5 on GitHub right now, and I should throw a link into the chat on that. It's been up for quite a while, so good luck proving that you were the source of it, since I uploaded it 9 months ago to GitHub. So here's a link to the source code so everyone can see. And on that note, I do have some other news to talk about related to satellite tracking and source code and stuff. This is a Celestron 4SE, 4 special edition, 4-inch special edition Celestron Next Star telescope. I do rather enjoy this scope. It's a fun little grab-and-go scope. It's my little grab-and-go telescope. It's not my main telescope. It also has this nice handy-dandy software for connecting it to a computer. And basically, it runs the telescope software on your computer and controls the telescope through a USB cable into the bottom of the hand controller. I do like this advancement as well over some of the older telescopes, even older Next Stars, which required a serial to USB conversion. This is just native USB, so it just plugs in and it emulates a COM port on your computer for communicating with legacy software, which technically mine is too. It's communicating with COM port-based telescopes with the ALX200 command set, and with this, it's actually connecting through ASCOM, which is still kind of acting like a serial type connection. Oh, thank you, Copernicus Thinker. Super chat from Copernicus Thinker, $2. Kudos to Astronomy Live. Thank you very much. So, basically tonight I'm just testing the software in equatorial mode. I had a bug report on this some time ago that it wasn't working with the EQ mod mounts, and I'm not super familiar with EQ mod. I know it's very popular, and somebody was saying that it was giving them errors, and it sounded like the error message was sounding like the commands it was trying to feed the telescope were invalid. Trying to have it go to certain right ascension declinations was not working right, and I haven't thoroughly tested my software in the polar alignment situation. When you've got a mount that's polar aligned, I haven't tested that as thoroughly as I have in altitude azimuth. Most of the satellite tracking I do tends to be in altitude azimuth, so I am going to test it some more in polar alignment tonight, in equatorial alignment tonight. Copernicus Thinker says, Astronomy Live, you might not believe this, but I had a deposit paid on a 29-inch Dobsonian. Yes, 29-inch Dobsonian made by a company in Idlewild, California. They took a year to make it, but I didn't have the funds. That was back in the early 1980s. Interesting. Wow. 29-inch. That would be larger than anything I've used in person, I think. Because we had a 20-something inch telescope when I was in college, but it wasn't quite that large. Cruising with Jay asks, how did I get into coding? Where did you start? Or rather, what did you start with? Well, that's a long story, and I'll try to make it short. I mean, I've done coding for many, many years. I tinkered around with BASIC, QBasic, and BASIC programming language when I was in high school, and tinkered around with some graphics calculator programs back then, a game or two in BASIC, and then kind of fell away from it for a long time. Didn't really do anything with programming for a very long time. And then in, I don't know what year it was exactly, a few years ago, I picked it up again and started doing Visual Basic. I figured that would be the easiest thing to do since I already had some experience with BASIC. And I created the first version of what would eventually become this program, SatTraker. It started off, I started calling it Teletrack, and then later found out that name was taken. But yeah, that was in Visual Basic, and some of the code is kind of the same. It's ported over from that Visual Basic program, but it started off for tracking asteroids, and then moved into tracking rockets and satellites with Teletrack, and sort of this omnibus program that would try to do everything. And it got to be really unwieldy, and it was really poorly optimized code, and just not a great coding language. I would not recommend Visual Basic. And so I was recommended to move into Python, and I started to learn Python. I picked up a book called Python Crash Course, something like that. And it was a really good beginner's book on how to get involved in Python, and watched some tutorials on CentDex's channel here on YouTube. And, hey Geistview, check my Twitter. Okay, I will check my Twitter. So, yeah, then I watched some YouTube tutorials, played around with some stuff, and have learned quite a bit. So let's see. I did check my notification. Oh, new notifications. And I see you tagged me there, guys. Wow, guys, those are stunning images. I have to say, officially better than any pictures I've ever taken of any of those objects. I've taken pictures of those objects, none of them that good. So Geistview took some, I guess I'm assuming those are your shots, some superb shots of the Pleiades, the Orion Nebula, the Running Man Nebula, and the Bubble Nebula. Fantastic. Really, really stunning stuff. I got to get some clear skies again. I can't wait for winter here in Florida. Get some clear skies, get some deep sky imaging going again. Yep. I'm looking forward to doing some more AO7 stuff, some more adaptive optics stuff this winter. So, Copernicus, yeah, you're just starting to study Python. It's a good language, I think. A very powerful language. You can do a lot with it. And that's what this program is now written in Python. Can I put them on screen? Yeah, let me make sure I'm not accidentally going to reveal anything personal if I do that. I can't do that. Okay, well, if I can do this. Yes, I can do this. Okay. Alright, well, actually, before I do that, I should ask Geist. Is that okay, Geist View? Are you okay with me sharing your images? I'm assuming you are. Yeah, we've had some rough weather over here, as you might have heard. The hurricane didn't really impact my side of the state at all, and even on the East Coast, where my parents live, it wasn't too bad, at least where they were. So, that's good. So, yeah. If Geist gives me permission, I'll share those pictures. Ah, Geist gave me permission. Okay, great. Alright, so here's his bubble nebula shot. Really, really stunning. Great shot. Sharp diffraction spikes. I'm assuming those are natural, but man, they look so perfect. It almost looks like you added those in post. Maybe you did. I don't know. Looks like you have maybe a sat streak there. That's cool. And you can even see... Now this is the sign of a really well done shot that's got a lot of light on it. You can even see dark nebulae here, an absence of stars, because you have such a good shot there that you can see that there's dark nebulae, cold gas and dust that's blocking the background view of stars there, but it's not lit up and ionized like this stuff here in the central area where the bubble nebula is located. So really, really high quality shot. This one is probably going to be even more stunning for people. This is the Orion Nebula, always a fantastic target, but Geist really knocked it out of the park here. He's got the Running Man Nebula, that's this blue one off to the left here, and the Orion Nebula all in one shot there. Obviously a wider field view than I'm able to get with my scope. But yeah, really fantastic details on the cloud structure there. Absolutely gorgeous. Again, you know, if you get enough light on these things, you can start to see darker areas that there might be some colder gas and dust, you know, blocking the view of background stars, and see that contrasted against the ionized sections of the nebula. Beautiful stuff. And then one more. Pleiades, really fantastic again, just a beautiful picture there, the Pleiades. This is a reflection nebula in the open cluster of the Pleiades. That's why it's blue, it's reflecting the starlight there in that cluster of young bright stars. Really beautiful, beautiful work. Stunning quality. Great stuff. Thanks, Geist. So, alright, getting back to programming here. So, I want to see if I can make this thing track SDO properly.
Acquiring object.
Yeah, it thinks it's going to SDO. I haven't checked whether those coordinates are valid or not, but at least it sent it to the right position.
Object acquired.
And now it's tracking. So you can see the deltas, the difference between predicted position and current position of the telescope. Sub-degree deltas in both right ascension and declination. We're at roughly 0.005 degrees delta in right ascension and 0.01 degrees in declination. So it's trying to issue corrective factors to keep it as close to the satellite as possible. Now, right now, it's not calibrated in terms of the camera, and this camera is obviously not attached to the telescope, rather it's looking at the telescope. SDO is a geosynchronous satellite, not geostationary but geosynchronous. So it's a very high altitude satellite. It doesn't move quickly. In fact, it's almost stationary in the sky. And I'm not exactly sure where the calibration, what the calibration was last set to on here. There's a feature I should add. Show what the current expected pixel scale is. But obviously I'm not actually using a mounted camera here. I'm not actually tracking a satellite, so I have no idea just how much this is going to throw off the tracking. But I'm going to tell it, I see the satellite in the camera, it's right here. It's this night light on the wall, and have it try to track that. And of course it will never actually be able to move where it thinks the satellite is onto the red box where it thinks the telescope is pointed. It's not actually going to have any effect as it moves the telescope. But I just want to see if it tracks properly or tries to make corrections. Yep. So you can see the telescope runs away there as I tell it, go track that thing. It thinks it's got a very wide angle camera, and so it thinks that when I click on the night light that it needs to move the telescope a lot to get it down there towards the satellite. And also, I think, well, I guess that's normal. Okay, let's see. Do it one more time. Interesting thing about that, it moved the telescope up and to the left. I expected it to move it to the left, but I also expected it to move the telescope down towards the south, because I'm clicking on a object that is down and to the left. Let me change the tracking type, feature tracking. Let's see. Let's just click on a feature that is over to the left, pretty much. Actually, up and to the left would be interesting. Let's say here. So it moves down and to the left. I do kind of wonder if there's a bug there with how it's trying to track that it's going the wrong direction in declination. Would that be for any particular reason? Let me stop tracking satellite for a second here. And if I undesignate the target, as you see, the telescope goes right back to where it was.
Acquiring object.
Which is by design. So it does think the satellite's at a positive declination.
Object acquired.
Huh. And I'm assuming if I click over to the right, up and to the right, well, that's interesting. It moves up and to the right. And it's pointed roughly at the celestial equator. And there it goes down and to the right. There's just going to the right. I wonder, the way it's behaving, it almost makes me think, that it is thinking that the camera is out as aligned, even though it would be mounted on the telescope normally and therefore polar aligned. And it's doing some weird, almost like field rotation type stuff to the image, or to the coordinates it thinks it's calculating. Would that be possible, maybe? Okay. I don't know. It just goes directly up, just slightly. Okay, it goes up. It could also... No, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe it's some sort of effect caused by... If I go straight up or straight down, it does move the telescope straight up or straight down, pretty much. I just wonder if it's that it thinks the camera view is like ridiculously wide angle, and instead of a planar projection, it's treating it like it's a spherical projection, or some weirdness there. I don't know what this thing was set to last. I really ought to know that, but I don't. So that might be partly why. Go up and to the left a little bit. Goes up and to the left. Go up and to the right a little bit. It does go up and to the right. And if I go down and to the right, it goes down and to the right. Down to the left, goes down to the left. Okay, but if I go way down to the left, it goes up. Huh. I could always have it print out the coordinates of things that I'm clicked on. Be interesting to see what that is. I'll do that next. But it's not giving me outright errors where it says that the command is formatted incorrectly or something like that. I was kind of expecting to see that based on the reports I was hearing about EQ mod issues where it was just outright spitting up errors where it thought that the command to the telescope was an invalid command. And so I thought, well, maybe I've got some bug somewhere with ASCOM control for equatorial telescopes. And it doesn't seem like I do. So, yeah, that's strange. Now, ASCOM is also a little finicky about disconnecting the scope and resetting and all that. I kind of don't like it as much in some ways. So we'll see how that goes. Disconnect the scope, stop the camera. I'm going to exit and save configuration. And I'm going to come in here and let's see. We're going to do some stuff and try to get it to where it shows me what coordinates it thinks I clicked on when I designate a target. Alright, let's see what the chat's got to say. BM Furball asks, what are your thoughts on the Celestron Altaz mount? I have an 8SE that I use with a wedge. May have pushed it too far with weight, and now the gearing is almost useless. Oof. Ooh, that's unfortunate. That is the weak side of the SE mounts, the Next Star mounts, especially with larger scopes like the 8 and so forth. You're putting a pretty heavy telescope on a single arm mount like this, and it doesn't have a huge amount of payload overhead where it can take on a massive amount of payload in addition to what it's already carrying with the telescope. So, and the other thing is you need to make sure, regardless of what kind of mount you're using, you need to make sure that your payload is balanced, that you've counterbalanced any heavy weights, you've counterbalanced the telescope so that it effortlessly moves up and down, left and right. And so that can be an issue. I hope you haven't damaged your mount. But I do rather like the Altaz setup of the Next Star. I usually use this in Altaz. I don't normally use this in polar alignment. It just doesn't make sense because this is not a kind of mount that is great for deep space astrophotography like what I just showed you from Geist View. This is more of a casual scope for visual observing or taking pictures of the planets or the moon, things that don't require a super accurate mount that can track the stars perfectly for many minutes at a time. For that, you need a much heavier duty mount. Even my LX200 is at the low end of what is capable of deep sky astrophotography, and really only thanks to the help of the SBIG A07 module am I able to do really high quality stuff with it. So those are factors to keep in mind. But it depends on what you're looking for. If you're just looking for a casual scope, I do think the Next Star mounts are great. They're also good for things like satellite tracking. They do respond correctly to the move access method of the ASCOM driver set, which is very key, very nice for doing this kind of work, so you can track fast-moving objects. I've done rocket launch tracking with this scope, I've done satellite tracking with this scope, and it works. So that is a surprisingly, I guess you would say, high-end feature for a low-end scope. So I do think the Next Star has a lot of advantages over other scopes in that price range. See my above comment. So Copernicus Thinker says, see my above comment. R.E. Leonids circa 1999-2000. I do remember the Leonids in, I guess it was 2000. It was my freshman year of college, and I think it would have been then. Yeah, it was a fantastic meteor shower. Copernicus Thinker says, my lifetime astro-observing highlight was without optics. Leonid shower 20 years ago out in Idlewild. Multiple meteors per second all the way through dawn. Unforgettable. I think I remember the same display you're talking about. It was my freshman year of college. It was the year 2000. And yeah, I think it was the Leonids. And there was one in particular that was so bright, it lit up the whole field. I was at Chiefland at the time, Chiefland Astronomy Village. And it was really dark skies, you know, really well-preserved dark skies, much better even back then, 20 years ago. And there was one meteor in particular, I'll never forget it. It just lit up the field. The whole field gasped. And we saw the smoke from that meteor persist for many minutes afterwards. I saw it in binoculars for a while thereafter. I've never seen anything like that before. So... Oh, thanks, Blue. Every like on this video makes an FE moron cry. Okay, so let's see if we can get it to display the coordinates that I'm clicking on. So you get a better idea what's going on here. What is this? This is setting calibration. Okay, so I'm in the calibration part of it. Need to come up here. Object follows true. Yeah. Okay, other than printing, we need to do a self text box insert. I want to see ASCOM, and this is going to be actually not under alt as, this is going to be under EQ. So that's under EQ. This is if it's an LX200. This is if we need ASCOM alt as EQ. Okay, so if EQ so I don't have it. Huh. I guess I don't have it printing the rates or anything. That's interesting. Okay, well, so be it. So we're going to do a text box insert. We're going to print into the text box in the bottom of the program window. We don't want the as diff, out diff. We want okay, that's the sat dec sat raw. Is this not... That's if the object's being followed, right? Yeah, because we got the object deck, okay. adding the deck diff. Current deck. Object deck. And I'm really not too concerned about the... I'm going to say delta, call this diff raw, and we're going to print the diff in raw number, and then object declination, we're going to get delta, call this detected declination, print the object deck. Do I want current deck as well, but I want that in degrees. Diff and raw is in degrees, object deck is in degrees. That can also be the source of errors. Unfortunately, I'm used to thinking in degrees in most of these calculations, but the way Python works, when you do things like trigonometric functions, it's going to expect the number to be in radians, so you always have to make sure that you're putting in what Python's expecting. Detected declination. It can lead to problems, especially for someone like me. And then expected declination, or really this is predicted dec. And this is going to be current deck. A current deck is already in radians, so this needs to be math degrees. Hope I've done that right. Yeah, math.degrees. Put that in parentheses and then close the string. So detected declination, predicted declination. Alright, that should be fine. Let's re-execute the program. So start the camera, and this is, I'm just going to leave it as is. No, not broke, don't fix it. Connect the scope, connect to Celestron telescope driver. And it thinks it's connected, that's good. And let us select the TLE file. It's going to be SDO. My webcam's out of focus. Sorry about that. Hey, webcam. Focus for me. Focus. Yeah, the autofocus on this webcam is terrible. Sometimes I can sort of force it to get its act together. But sometimes I can't. I don't know. Sorry. Just have to live with it. I know it's blurry. It's an old webcam. It's not great. Come on. Sometimes I have to like blind it to like get it to reset or refocus. I don't know. Doesn't want to work right now. Doesn't matter. But there you go. Okay, so start tracking satellite.
Acquiring object.
Yes, you acquire the object. That's real good.
Object acquired.
And it starts tracking. And let's just do brightness-based tracking for the moment. So it does think, interesting. See that? It thinks the declination is higher than the current declination. Like way higher. Why would it think that though? At least it makes sense why the telescope's moving the way it is. That's not the problem. It's something funky about how it's calculating the declination. Something is funky there. Something is not right there. And I've never seen that in altitude azimuth mode, though I'm tempted to try it. Tempted to... Okay, stop tracking satellite for a second. I can't redesignate out as. I don't even think that would work, because this thing actually does think it's in polar line mode. But I'm curious if something about that would cause it to... I wonder if it's specific to equatorial mode that it's doing that right now. Oops. Track type, feature tracking. Right.
Acquiring object.
Okay, so it's like something with the math is
object acquired.
breaking down for some reason. Whoa. Weird. Okay. So there it sees it as negative 36 degrees declination. It's gotta think that this image scale is absolutely massive. This is going to negative 27, negative 45. And then goes positive. I kind of get the feeling that this is due to some quirky thing where it thinks this field of view is like crazy wide angle and it's wrapping back on itself essentially. Which is silly, but I don't know, it's weird. Really strange. At least if I get closer to the red dot, that's where it thinks the telescope's pointed. And as I get closer to that dot, the difference is much less. But yeah, difference in RA, negative 159 in degrees, negative 100. It thinks there's a like 150 degree difference in RA, just going out 100 degree, 141 degree. And then suddenly wraps back to negative 74 degree. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's getting goofed up by thinking that this field of view is stunningly massive, which normally it wouldn't be, I don't think. Not that wide. So I'm going to disconnect the scope, stop the camera, and I'm going to exit and save configuration. And I'm going to go in here and actually manually edit the configuration file to tell it to knock that off, basically. So where has it got the... Let's see here. I gotta go up here and figure out where the... I don't have the configuration file annotated in the current version, so I kind of have to know which line is which myself. So let's see, when it loads the configuration file, tracking type, min, bright, flip, mount, rotate, telescope type, image scale. Okay, main view X, main view Y. Image scale is currently 1. I think that's like 1 degree per pixel. So yeah, that's why it's wrapping back on itself. Alright, we're going to call this 0.008. That's usually... I think 0.008 is, maybe it's 0.08. I might be off by an order of magnitude, but that's closer to my normal working image scale. So that's the real reason. I was working with a dummy image scale that it doesn't represent reality at all, and would mean that somehow the view would have more than 360 degrees field of view in it, which, wrap your minds around that one. That doesn't make any sense, does it? So it would be a 720 degree camera. What, 720 no scope? What? It's just, it doesn't make any sense. So you know what they say, garbage in, garbage out. So I gave it a more realistic number, and we'll try that out. So let's draw on. Okay, it's connected. Now I'm going to select SDO. Okay. And start
acquiring
tracking
object.
again.
Object acquired.
Goody goody. That's better. Now it's moving down and to the left like expected, and it's doing it at, as you can see, a much more reasonable velocity, because it doesn't think it could be that far away. Even when it's at the edge of the field of view, it doesn't think the satellite is like, 100 degrees away. So it's not trying to chase it as hard. You can see predicted deck, detected deck is always a little lower because it's trying to chase its own tail here, basically. And it doesn't, the delta doesn't decrease because, of course, it's not actually catching up to anything. Alright, that's good. Alright, let's see, it's on feature-based tracking. So yeah, it goes up and to the left, like you'd expect. So we can do up and to the right. Yep. Pretty much. Yep. Goody. Let's do down and to the right. Yeah. That looks good. Alright. So that wasn't really a bug with the program. That was just a bug with the configuration file having a dummy number that doesn't make any sense. That's all that was. Yes, Winigar says, I've been swamped with working on drone communications, but I'll get to checking out the comment tracker sometime soon. Alrighty. Is that are you talking about my deleted comment bot, or I forget what all you might be talking about? Maybe it's another project. Oh, Geistview might have already taken off. Well, if you're still listening, Geistview, hope you have a good one out there. Hope you get clear skies. Oh, Jeff Lucas just replied to a comment I gave him a couple days ago. I don't know if he's watching the stream or... Hey Jeff, if you're in the chat, let me know. He was looking at investigating GNO 539-2, that infamous winged star on Google Sky. I got designs on photographing it again. I've done it before multiple times, even a few months ago. So I was thinking of doing another stream, early morning stream at some point. Imaging that Google Sky wing star again, which is actually a reflection nebula in T-Tauri star, and do another parallax measurement on it. of course, with even my 8-inch scope, you can't see any detectable parallax. It's too many light years away. But that's kind of the point. It's obviously not Nibiru. It's obviously not a solar system object coming to kill us all or anything like that. There's a lot of fear-mongering that goes on around about that object. So, I don't know. I kind of saw like a video or two talking about it again. So I thought it might be worth going after one more time. But you don't need satellite tracker for that. So here's the other deal with the... Speaking of satellite trackers, I was going to touch on this earlier. There's some interesting news about a very popular satellite tracking program that's already out there. One of the oldest in the amateur astronomy community for satellite tracking, Brent Bouchard's satellite tracker. Brent sold off the rights to the program to another amateur astronomer some years back, and he started distributing the program for free, but he kept the source code closed, and he had plans on expanding the program and adding features to it, maybe even ASCOM, for example. At the moment, it is tailored for individual types of telescopes and talks to those telescopes' protocols directly, like the LX200, the Celestrons, and so he wanted to modernize it, but I don't know how much he did with the code, but he certainly, has the rights to it. Originally, the program was a commercial program, or at least it was sold. It was not freeware. It was commercially sold by Brent directly, and I think I paid $30 for it back in the day, and I thought it was worth every penny. So Brent sold it for a tidy sum, and the guy who bought it wanted to sell the rights. He wants out of it. He's getting older now, and as he said in the original email to me, or one of the original emails to me about it, and I'm pretty sure he copied a bunch of other people too, that he doesn't want this program to essentially go to the grave with him. He doesn't want it to turn into vaporware. It's not really vaporware, it's already out there, but he doesn't want it to, the secrets of it, the source code of it, to be lost. So he tried to sell the rights to the program for a 5-figure sum. Or no. Yeah, it was 5-figure sum. And it didn't sell at that price. And now he wants to sort of crowdfund the program to become open source, to get back his initial investment, because he did pay a lot of money to get the rights to it. And that included the rights to the software, the forum for the software, and the website of the software. And it is sort of the go-to satellite tracking program that's out there for amateur astronomy, I would say. If you've got an LX200 or a Celestron, it's sort of the default go-to software, especially now that it's available for free. And I originally had deep concerns when he was wanting to sell the rights to the program that somebody might buy it up and make it a paywall again to even get the program, and I mean, they could do whatever they wanted with it, right? And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean, anyone who would pay thousands of dollars like that to get access to it is probably going to want to recoup their investment. And certainly I don't have the money to throw at it like that. He asked me years ago, I think it was years ago, back when I was developing SatTraker, and sort of the earlier version of SatTraker, when I first really started making headway with this and was posting about it on his forum. My original thought, going way back to the Teletrack days years ago, when it was just a Visual Basic program, my original thought was to use SatTraker as a predictive program where it would predict satellite paths, satellite tracks, and my program would just provide almost like an add-on visual-based tracking, so that you can click on the satellite and it will follow it and center it up for you. So even if your mount isn't accurate enough to perfectly land on the satellite and keep it in the eyepiece. Most mounts aren't. Mine aren't. You can click on it with the video and it'll center it up for you, and you can see it in the eyepiece. Even at high magnification, it'll keep it in the eyepiece and have a happy night. Well, that's all great. So I was originally thinking of this program as an add-on for Satellite Tracker years ago. I didn't really want to tackle the whole problem of actually calculating based on the orbit where the satellite is at every moment in time. Those calculations are pretty complex, as you might expect. And I didn't really want to tackle that problem initially. I was thinking, well, maybe I could just make this as an add-on for his program, and I tried to explore that possibility. Didn't really work out. And so I ended up going my own way of sorts and creating what is now SatTraker. And when I started going my own way on that, he understandably felt a bit threatened by that and felt that I was undermining the value of his program. And so he kindly asked me to leave his forum. I won't say he banned me. He didn't ban me, but he asked me to take the discussion of SatTraker off of his forum, which I did. And totally understandable. I get it. I'm not trying to encroach on his territory of his forum there with that program. It started off, like I said, honestly, good intentions. I just wanted to make it easier to track satellites, because with Satellite Tracker, there's no computer vision component to it. You are tracking it with your telescope and a computer based on the orbit, but to center it up, to add corrective factors to the tracking, you either have to use a joystick or a mouse or manually click to add timing corrections or tracking corrections. It's easy enough to do, but it does require a bit of skill. The easiest way I found to do it, and it took me a few years to figure this out, honestly, was to have two video windows. So you got the main camera view through the telescope, and then you got the viewfinder camera. You need a viewfinder camera in addition to your main camera that sits side by side, so that you can see where the satellite is in the view and then try to guide it to your crosshairs, either with the mouse or I used to use the joystick option, but I got away from doing that because it just wasn't fast enough. It was easier and faster to use the mouse. But it still required a fair bit of skill. One of the problems is, as the telescope is turning, let me crank up the speed here and just move the telescope. As the telescope is turning like this right now, you see in the window how the telescope is turning. As it turns through the sky like that, tracking a satellite, what normally happens is you get field rotation in terms of where you'll see the background stars streaking by, right? So let's imagine you're seeing a satellite steady in the view here, just a single dot, a satellite that you're tracking, and you're seeing the stars streaking by as you're tracking through the sky very quickly. Well, as you go from rising to transiting the meridian to setting, what ends up happening, and normally the telescope would be turning the other way, but what ends up happening is the direction the stars are streaking changes. It might start off, as it rises, the stars streaking down towards the bottom, and then as it transits the meridian, the stars are streaking from right to left, and then as it sets, the stars are streaking from down to up. Well, the way his program works, you have timing corrections which influence how far up and down the track you're tracking, and then tracking corrections which are directly perpendicular to that. The problem is, if the field of view is rotating, especially true in out to azimuth setups, but even if you're not, if your tracking axis is not parallel to the satellite's orbit, and it usually won't be, then you'll get field rotation. And so as it's rising, the stars are streaking this way. So if you issue a timing correction, it's going to change where the satellite is in the vertical axis of the image. As you transit the meridian, it's going to affect the position of the satellite in the horizontal axis of the image. And then as it sets, it's going to once again affect, the timing corrections will affect how the satellite moves in the vertical axis. So at all points during the tracking, how you move the mouse has a different impact on how it actually moves the satellite in the view. You can see why that gets confusing very quickly. And so that's why I say it takes some skill to do. If you know how to do it and you get used to it, it does start to make sense and it gets to be easier, but it's never super easy. And it requires some trial and error. It requires some skill, and you're going to fail the first few times you do it. So I'm trying to make this program in part to make the process foolproof, because it takes you out of that, having to do that yourself. You just click on the satellite, and it will move it to the center of the view, regardless of where it is along the track. That's the idea. So my thought was, again, his program can be used to export a file that shows where the satellite's going to be at all points in time as it would be tracked by the telescope. I was going to take that file into my program and use that as the basis of the tracking, and then I would just be providing the visual tracking aspect of it. Like I said, it didn't really work out that way, and ultimately it was just simpler to just do it all myself. And so that's what I ended up doing, and that's why he and I had to sort of part ways on that. But he did ask me, as we parted ways, did I want to buy the rights to Satellite Tracker, Brent Boshard's program? Well, that was a very interesting question for me. I thought at first it was sarcastic, honestly, or maybe just, if not entirely sarcastic, then mostly sarcastic. Like, thanks, dude, for encroaching on my territory. You want to buy this thing? But he was actually serious. He wasn't being sarcastic. He was actually being serious. He was asking me because he wanted to offload the rights to it. He doesn't want to deal with it anymore. He doesn't want to be the one that's maintaining that program. And I didn't respond to his original request, or if I did, I said thanks, but no thanks. Because again, I felt I had already offended him enough, and I didn't really want to offend him further by throwing a number at him that was going to be lowball. And sure enough, he ended up wanting a lot more than I would have expected. But he also paid a lot more than I expected for the rights to the program. So right now, like I said, he's trying to crowdfund the development of his software to become open source. And it's still a lot of money. He's trying to raise $7,000 now. So I don't know if he's actually going to be able to hit that goal. Maybe some generous investors, generous amateur astronomers will do it, and I hope they do, because I still think it is a fantastic program, especially for the planning phases of trying to plan your observations of satellites. It has a lot of useful tools. It's got a mapping feature. It's got a globe feature. You can see where the satellite is around the globe. You can't do that with this program. This program is not for planning your observations, obviously. It's purely for the tracking side. Now, I would love to take the best elements of his program and mix it with mine. I still think that would be the ultimate combination. The planning stages of his program, where you can plot your observation, you can plan your observations, you can plan what satellites you're going to look at that night ahead of time. It will notify you when they're visible above the horizon, and you can see where they are on the map. It's beautiful. And then you can click and you can track. And then I would just like to replace the tracking aspect with my tracking program. So I had thoughts about coming to you all and asking if you guys wanted to crowdfund me to get the rights to that program. But when I found out the rights to the program were going to be like a 5-figure sum, it wasn't sensible. For that much money, it just didn't make any sense. Even if it was crowdfunded, I couldn't really justify that much money on it. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if I had the time, I could just write the parts of that myself. The planning your observations parts of that. It's just a matter of time. But if it were easier to do, cheaper to do and quicker to do, it would be nice to just mix the best parts of his program with mine. Now his is, I think, programmed in Visual Studio, maybe in Visual Basic, which I'm familiar with, or maybe C#, which I'm less familiar with. But it might be possible to port that over to Python, maybe. Or it might be easier to go the opposite direction and port mine to whatever his language is and reincorporate that. I do know that I could use EMGU to act as a wrapper for OpenCV. That's what I'm using for the visual tools here for the processing the image data. It's all OpenCV. EMGU is a way to use OpenCV in Visual Studio, but I'm not too big on it anymore. I much prefer to work with OpenCV more directly in Python. So yeah, there's some issues there, but it would have been maybe nice to mix, to match our programs up. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't know. I have trouble foreseeing him actually raising that much money to get it open source. Like I said, I hope he does, because I still think it's the best amateur program out there that can do both tracking and the planning phases. So yeah, that just gives me a lot of thoughts that maybe I want to should I invest more time in SatTraker's design to add planning functionality to it? Because right now it's all up to the user to know when the satellite's going to be above the horizon and when to observe it, and when you know it's above the horizon, then you click start tracking. Yeah, that might not be ideal. It's functional, and again, first version of SatTraker here, or the initial versions, are all about just getting it working. The critical part is the actual tracking. You want that to be as simple as possible, and from then on you can add creature comforts, things like planning tools and things like that. But maybe I kind of thought I would just leave that for others to do if they wanted to. But if Satellite Tracker, if Brent Bouchard's program goes into obscurity, or he's not able to raise the money and he just doesn't release the source code and drops off the scene, if that happens and the program becomes obsolete, that's not a great thing either, And let's be honest here, amateur astronomy is demographically slanted to one side of the age spectrum. I tend to be, at least in my experience, one of the youngest people on the field at Chiefland. And, I'm not getting any younger day by day, and I'm not seeing a huge influx of young people onto the field at Chiefland. So a lot of guys are, getting out of the hobby or downsizing and retiring in various ways, in a very literal sense. And I just worry that the hobby will die, or knowledge will be lost, expertise will be lost as these things change. So I really don't want to see Satellite Tracker meet that kind of fate. It's been a program that inspired me to make this SatTraker program. So those are all just thoughts I'm having, and information that you guys might not be aware of about what's going on there with Satellite Tracker. You may not have even been aware about that program, but yeah, that's like a pretty bog standard program and a highly recommended program for satellite tracking with amateur hardware. So yeah, amateur astronomy is a bunch of old folks, as Scott Mayer says. That's true. It's politically incorrect maybe, but it's totally true. And so I tend to be on the younger side of things in the hobby, and I want to make sure that I do whatever I can to contribute to it with my skills, and keep it alive for the next generation, for our kids to enjoy. And part of that is making sure that the capabilities that have already been developed aren't lost. Things like being able to track low Earth orbit satellites with off-the-shelf telescope hardware. Yeah, I think both Celestron and Meade at this point have their own built-in satellite tracking functions with their telescopes, but they're not, let's be honest, they're not great, they're not brilliant, and they're certainly not foolproof. The idea of this program is to be as foolproof as possible so that a beginner can approach the field of satellite tracking without being intimidated. And it's always been of interest to me, and so I want to open that up to as many beginners as possible. So that's my goal with all this, and it seems like, at least for now, these equatorial functions are working properly, which is good. Once we fix that issue with the config file where it was giving crazy values for the angle to the object that it thought it was tracking, everything seems to be working okay. So that leaves open the question of why it's not working with EQ mod telescopes. And it seems like those are fairly popular. I get questions about those quite a lot. So I do want to tackle that next, and the next step to doing that will be to install an emulator for EQ mod and run it through the program so that it's connecting to it via an emulator and see what happens. Apparently it doesn't work, and I'm not entirely sure why. It ought to, if EQ mod is handling ASCOM commands correctly. Now, maybe the EQ mod driver is not really handling ASCOM commands in the standardized way that it's supposed to. ASCOM is a universal driver set, for those who don't know, that provides control of telescopes of all types, and it's supposed to be, like I said, universal, so that you, as a programmer, can just write one set of commands and control many different telescopes with those commands. So as long as your telescope's compatible with the move axis method, it's supposed to work. But it seems like right off the bat it's running into trouble with EQ mod, and not necessarily because EQ mod is incompatible with that command set, but it's just not handling it the way I would expect. It doesn't seem to like the way that I'm calling the right ascension and declination axes in the program, which is weird. The next star doesn't have any problem with it at all. It works great. So why doesn't it like it for EQ mod? I don't know. So out as, yeah, I'm calling axis 0, move axis 0, move axis 1. Maybe, this is why I'm kind of wondering if maybe EQ mod doesn't number its axes like this. Maybe it is expecting a string instead of an integer. I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, and as Scott Mayer points out, not all ASCOM drivers support all ASCOM commands. Exactly, which is why in the program my program is supposed to handle this properly, because it checks when you initially connect. It will check to see if your ASCOM mount supports the set of commands that it needs, which is pretty much just the move axis method. That the go-to stuff. Ooh, $20 super chat from P&K Space Imaging. Amazing work as always. Keep it up. Thanks, Keith. Thanks. So, yeah, as I was saying, when you connect to the telescope, it's supposed to check and see if your scope supports the command set that it needs. So right here, actually, you can see if axis is false or axis 2 is false. So axis and axis 2, it calls up axis index 0 and axis index 1, which normally corresponds to right ascension and declination, as self.tell.canMoveAxis, and checks to see if those are true. This is an ASCOM command that simply checks whether the scope supports the move axis method or not. And if it does, it returns a boolean of true, and if it doesn't, it returns a boolean of false, right? So if either of those is false for either of those axes, it prints out a statement. The scope cannot use the move axis method. It also puts it into the text box in the program, and then it disconnects the ASCOM driver, or the ASCOM telescope there. It disconnects the scope. So it is supposed to check that, and it's supposed to gracefully handle that problem before it even becomes a problem. It's supposed to disconnect you and take you back out of connecting to the scope. And it's supposed to tell you that the scope cannot use the move axis method. That's not the error that it's giving with the EQ mods stuff. Let me see if I can look up in my email. And I apologize to whoever it was who emailed me about that. I know that was a while ago, about the EQ mod stuff. I've just been so busy, I haven't had a chance to really tackle it yet. So I'm just now getting around to doing it. But here we are, checking the equatorial functions of the program. And yeah, it was on cloudy nights, actually. So okay, he did send me the full dump of the exception that it posted when he tried to connect his ASCOM mount, or as a EQ mod ASCOM mount. It was a Skywatcher HEQ5 Pro. I'm able to connect to your mount from within your program and use an ASI 120mm camera to pick a tracking target. However, when I attempt to calibrate the camera, so it went through this process, and apparently the scope returned can move axis true for both these axes, which tells me it ought to be referencing the axes by index number as expected, and it ought to be able to move the axes with the move axis method. But when it actually tried to during the calibration protocol, well, that might actually be a real issue. Let's see. It said, because that's handled separately in the program. I'm not going to show the exact error message that it gave him, because it actually shows his name, because his name is his username apparently on Windows, and it shows the whole directory where the program was located. So I'm not going to show that. But it said attribute error it raised an attribute error, self.username attribute error EQ mod telescope right ascension. So when he tried to calibrate it, it raised an error. Now that's interesting to me, because calibration is handled separately from tracking satellites. So maybe there is some sort of issue with the calibration part. Start calibration, set calibration. So if everything's good to go, if it's alt as, do this, else do this. Tell azimuth altitude. Ah, yeah. That is a bug, I think. No. Oh, no. EQ. No, this is the EQ part here. It's not a bug. Okay, so it does call self-tell right ascension, self-tell declination. And at least on my scope, that's fine. Maybe there is something about the EQ mod, HEQ5 Pro. Maybe there's something about that Skywatcher mount that you're not allowed to call the right ascension and declination axes for some reason. What line did it kick out the error on? It said it was line... Oh, that was in threading. Set calibration. Line 1059. But that was an earlier version, I suspect. Self X1. Self X1. It's right here. It's this line. So right at the start, it tries to get the current position of the telescope in right ascension, and it wasn't able to. It wasn't able to find EQ mod telescope right ascension. Interesting. As Jaren would say, interesting. Okay. So we still got the scope connected here. I can pick a tracking target, and I can pretend to start calibration. Of course, it won't actually work, but does it generate an error is the question. Nope. Does not generate an error. And the motors are turning. I've listened in close to it. I can hear the motors turning. It's trying to calibrate. Of course, again, it's not able to actually chase that object there because it's not on the camera, or the camera's not on the telescope. Ew. And I still don't have a proper stop button for the calibration protocol. Oh no! Oh no, what have I done? Okay, just disconnect the scope. Exit, save TLE. It might not have liked that because I stopped it. Ooh, yeah, it didn't like that. Okay. Let me try to reconnect, because I think the scope's still trying to turn the motors. Okay. Yeah, okay. think it's fine now. Okay, so it didn't generate an error on my end, which tells me that, yeah, the next star has that attribute, but maybe EQ mod does not, which is weird. Why wouldn't EQ mod have the attribute of just right ascension? I want to know what the right ascension of the telescope is. You're not allowed to get that out of EQ mod? I don't know. I'll have to look into that more. There's definitely something going on there, though. Some specific quirk about EQ mod. PK Imaging says, I'm dumbfounded by software and am amazed by anyone understands it. Thank goodness you do, LOL. Yet I find it fascinating. Thanks, PK. It seemed overwhelming to me years ago when I started into this. I didn't think I would get this far with it. I didn't think I would get nearly this far with it. I thought, crazy. I mean, how would I ever be able to write software that actually works with images out of webcams and actually does stuff with it that's useful? But here we are. So yeah, there's some weird quirk about EQ mod for sure. P&K says, excuse me for the ignorance on how the system works, but does it work and track based on photons it sees or on known satellite tracks, etc.? The answer to that is yes, both. So the way it works with the tracking is you load up a TLE file, that's an orbital elements file, for a known satellite, and then when you click Start Tracking Satellite, it will start tracking based purely on the orbital data of the satellite, where it's predicted to be based on the orbit and the alignment of the telescope. Also, I should have pointed this out a long time ago. I know I'm gonna have to redo a new instruction video on this software. But when you are tracking with an ASCOM telescope, you need to make sure that you are aligned. If you're like tracking with the next star, in particular, the quirk of the next star is you need to make sure you aligned with the actual dinky little remote here on the window, not the actual physical remote. If you use the actual physical remote to align the telescope, it won't transfer that alignment to the virtual remote in the computer that is actually talking to the software. So you need to align your telescope on the stars with the virtual remote in the computer. And then when you click Start Tracking, it'll track based on where it expects it to be in the sky. That should put it in your video viewfinder. You want this to be a video viewfinder, you actually want to put this camera on the telescope and have it seeing the stars and all that. When you see the satellite in your view, let's say that's the satellite, you can choose to track it with either feature-based tracking, where it will actually look for similar images. It's very CPU intensive though, especially the bigger your tracking box. The smaller your tracking box, the higher your frame rate's going to be, and probably the easier time it'll have tracking. Or you can do brightness-based tracking, which is not hard on the CPU at all, so you can have very large tracking boxes, and you just click away from the satellite to calibrate the background. What you're actually doing is you're calibrating the background light level, and it looks for whatever the brightest thing is in the tracking box. So you want to have your box big enough that you can easily put it around your object, but not so big that you're getting other bright stars in the same box. So you get your tracking box close to your target. You don't have to be exact with it. You don't actually want to be exact with it. You click, it calibrates the background light level, and it goes for the brightest object in the view. Done. Easy. So I can track there, I can track that. See, the problem here is it's got a really bright wall compared to, like, say, the hand controller sign there, or the buttons. Yeah, whatever. So yeah, you do it that way. But when you're tracking something with other bright objects nearby, if it's an extended object, like, and this is really more to do with tracking rockets, that's the main reason I've got feature tracking, but it's also useful here if you're calibrating the camera. You might be tracking on a power pole or a light pole or something, where you have an extended object and you want to just track on that extended object that's not just a point of light. You can use feature-based tracking, and it'll actually look for whatever you clicked on and track based on that. So yeah, it will then center the satellite in the view. So what it's doing then, it's tracking on both. It's tracking based on the orbit still for predicting where it's going to be in the next moment and how fast it's traveling, but it also looks at where the object is in the view, and it adds a corrective factor based on how far off it is from the object. And so it will gradually center it up by continually applying corrective factors until it's centered. Jorge Hernandez says, but I get the error self.sec equals int self.resp 6 slice 8 value error invalid interliteral for int with base 10. Does it say what are you running SatTraker v5? And what are you doing with it, I guess is the question. Self-sec. That's interesting. Oh, I recognize where that is in my code, I think. I think that's in reading the LX200 data. Not seeing it in my code, but I know it's in there somewhere. I think is for the format when you get the telescope altitude, GA hashtag get telescope altitude returns. Yeah, that's for I believe that's for the LX200 part of it. Is there is a new version of your script? Yeah, the newest version is version 5. It sounds like you've got LX200 tracking selected if it's doing that. Are you using an LX200? Because if you're not, it's going to give you problems if you've selected the LX200. Let me come back in here in my window. So you got to make sure you've got the right telescope type selected. It sounds like you're on LX200 altitude azimuth, which is the default. But if you're using ASCOM, make sure you select one of these two, whether it's ASCOM and altitude azimuth, or like I've got here, ASCOM equatorial mount. So let's see, self-sec. That's definitely in here. I don't know why it's not. Yeah, that's all LX200. Self-response degrees, response degrees. But I'm not seeing... self-resp read. There you go. Six to 8. Yeah, it's this line right here, isn't it? 902 in the current version. Yeah, you're using an LX200? Okay, well you definitely have LX200 selected if it's executing this part of the code. It only executes this part of the code. Read to hash, that's a function I put in there for reading the serial data off of the LX200. It's definitely specific to the LX200. If you are using an LX200 telescope, if you're actually using an LX200 telescope, that is the protocol you want to use. However, if it's an LX200 AutoStar, if it's one of the newer LX200s that's got AutoStar on the hand controller, it may not work. I haven't tested it with the AutoStars myself, but I've heard reports of errors. I would actually be very interested to know if you do have an LX200 AutoStar, what it's doing. Because I haven't had the ability to test it with the AutoStars at all. In theory, they use the same command set. However, in practice, I think there's some quirks about it. I don't think it's really the same. Mead assures me, even via email, it's the same. I don't believe them. I think there's something weird going on there. And I have a feeling that to work it out, I would actually need to test it on an LX200 in person, because I have a feeling I would have to work through many versions of the program to sort of trial and error my way through it until I got it to actually talk to the AutoStars properly. Is the classic LX200. You have a classic LX200? If you have the classic LX200, you have to use the LX200 command set on the program. It will not work with the ASCOM, because the ASCOM drivers for Mead never seem to support the move axis method, which is required. So it won't work with ASCOM. So if you are actually using the, so sorry, it might be the language barrier or something. Are your actual telescope that you're trying to use with it, is it actually classic or is it actually AutoStar? If it's classic, it ought to work. I've used the software with my LX200 Classic many times, and it has always worked. It's never given me issues, especially there. And yeah, I see what you're saying there about the format you get when you call the telescope altitude is either degrees minutes or degrees minutes seconds. Yes, very good point. That depends on whether the telescope is in the high precision mode or not. That is driven by whether the telescope's in the high precision mode or not. When I connect or disconnect the telescope and it's an LX200, here's what I actually do. I call Q hashtag U hashtag. So I make sure that when I connect and disconnect, I'm turning on and turning off the high precision mode. So Q is right. Q is stop. Isn't that stop? I think that's stop slew. Just stop slew. And I then call U hashtag, which turns off high precision. When I connect, I write U hashtag, which should turn on high precision mode to give it the so that I return degrees minutes seconds, not just degrees minutes. If your scope, I could see that error may be coming up if your scope was put into high precision mode before you connected it to my program. My program didn't expect that, and so it actually ended up turning off high precision when it's trying to turn it on. I could see that as a failure mode, actually, and unfortunately I don't know. There might be some command in there in the command set. I don't know of a way of polling the telescope to find out if it's in high precision or not, other than just evaluating the output of the serial code, the serial data. That might be doable. God, that would add some complexity, but I could do that. Bottom line, make sure that you haven't accidentally put it into high precision mode before you connect it to my software. You actually want the telescope to just be pretty much fresh out of a startup and just do your basic 2-star alignment and then connect it to my software. If you connect it to some other software, that could screw it up. That might have put it in high precision mode first. Or if you... There's another failure mode too that I know about, where if you've connected it to an LX200 Classic and then you close the software without disconnecting it and then you connect it again, you fire up the software again and you connect it again, it could produce that error, I think. So that could be as well. So I think you're right. I think it's the formatting issue, and it's because it's probably desynced from where the program expects the high precision mode to be. That's an interesting issue. I hadn't heard of that one before, but it makes sense in certain conditions. That does make sense. Alright, so I hope that solves your problem, Jorge. I hope that really gets you going there with the LX200 Classic. This software should be awesome with the LX200 Classic. It's been great for me, anyway. So that's going to about do it, I think, for tonight. I will come back to tackle EQ mod again. I'm going to see if I can download an emulator for EQ mod and try to figure out what's going on there. It does seem like it's something weird where EQ mod is not letting me pull the right ascension and declination in the way I expected to be able to pull it. So I'll have to dig into ASCOM again and see if there's some weird specificity about that. I don't understand why that would be, but we'll see. I'll fire it up with the emulator and we'll just test it by trial and error a bit and see if we can get it to work with EQ mod, because I know that'll open up some other telescope types like Skywatcher to being able to use this software. Alright, thanks everybody for watching, and clear skies, folks. If you get a chance, please tweet at TeamYouTube. Let them know about the false privacy and copyright strikes that are flying around thanks to FE Core. And let's raise awareness of that to TeamYouTube till they finally respond and take care of that problem. Yeah, it is a lot of code, Requiem. It's over 1,000 lines long. I should take out what I should do. I should take out a few of these blank lines so that it's exactly 1337 lines long. Wouldn't that be neat? Let's see, I got a few extra carriage returns in there. There we go. Now it's exactly 1337 lines long. It is officially leaked. Alright, we'll continue this later. That's going to do it for tonight. Thanks again for coming, guys. Clear skies, folks.